Alright, welcome back to the stream. Sorry about that, don't know what happened. But anyway, I have saved this file here, and we have this weird sound here, and we have this weird sound here, and we have this. And apparently my Twitch channel is looping what I'm saying, which is great. Just don't want that. Anyway, let's go here. I'm just trying to mute my channel, really. Here we go, and the channel is muted. And I can write stuff in the chat, right? Let's try it out. I can, but not, no. For some reason I can't. Anyway. And not even here. Anyway, the sounds of this is pretty cool. Let's close some of these here. Here we go, and see if we can get something cool out of this. Actually, I found here in the beginning of the file here this. It's me cracking my fingers, which of course is a really bad habit. You shouldn't do that. It doesn't harm you, I've heard, but it's just me slurping on the cottage cheese that we had. So we'll just say level EBU, just make it a little louder. Should be fine. Should be fine. Here we are. And right. So this gory sound that I need for going back and forth in this portal, this might actually be pretty cool. And the EQ needs to switch that off. And this. We'll just save this and call it Slurpee Burpee. What I'm trying to do is that I'm literally just trying to create a library of sounds for the DARQ DLC, which I can then later take and just throw into my Cubase session and then do whatever I want with it. Just keep it as wave default. So the thing is that we can always pitch this down. I'm trying to see what if it goes real slow. Nah. Nah, that would be more like a monstrous thing. So we don't want that. We don't want that at all. Up here, let's go back to 48. Right. Here's another one. So what I'm thinking is that if I take this, sort of like I can try and combine it with a boomy sound, you know, as in DARQ, which is sounding pretty boomy all the time, we might be able to get something real cool, like and like that from when going in and out of the fleshy world. Now I'm cracking my fingers again. I don't know why. So we can do that when going in and out of the fleshy world. That'll be pretty cool. Ahoy there. Hey, Bert. and don't worry about it. You won't have nightmares. This is just Slurpee stuff going on. This is cottage cheese. It's not dangerous at all. It tastes real good. Well, it tastes like nothing, but it's fantastic. Kind of like with mozzarella cheese. Taste of nothing. Tastes fantastic. Let's try out here. Also, I'm pretty new to streaming, so I'm not really the best person to stream and write in the chat at the same time. Anyway, this here, we'll just save this as Slurpee 2. So I don't know if you got that part, but I'm trying to literally just create a library of stuff that I can then copy over and then do my worst with later. Basically, probably use this as some sort of modulation, maybe, for whatever comes. So this here is more like a Slurpee hit. And we'll get rid of this one here.
Moving on to some
Yeah, this was the sound that we did before, which is pretty cool. This one here where we pitched it down. And we can definitely use that for something. If we take this here. It's a good start for sure. It's a little sad that this one here is so bumpy. We can fix that by using something called PicsArt. PicsArt is just it's a fine tool. It's just kind of crappy in many ways. It doesn't do anything but just crank up the volume of what you have, and then prevent you from going anywhere in terms of above a certain level. So, which works fine here. Let's just press A, and we'll render in place. Kind of like the cheapest processor, the cheapest limiter and compressor you can get in one go. Actually, we should maybe take this out. Gory stuff. Da, da, da. Say your peak master, peak mastering, peak master. We'll just give it 12 decibels, really. Render in place. Nah, I can do a round more. Here we go. It's a pretty nasty sound, actually. Wet blood. Let's just call it that. Right. Just trying to log in here to Patreon because I need to post this. Anyway, this nasty sound. Alright. So basically what I'm doing is that I'm just really quickly editing these sounds so that I can get as much material as possible into a library so that I can sort of like name them all so that I can throw them all into my Cubase project and then later figure out how they are. Basically just categorizing. I'm creating what I previously mentioned it as Lego material. It's what's going down. Here we are. Here we are. of editing dark sounds. Sorry about this, by the way. It's here we are. Anyway, category. I usually just give them my files really quick names so that I can find them again real fast, and not necessarily name them correctly. It's more like I name them what I think they resemble instead of having a naming convention. Naming conventions are in my process for later use. Um, so which part, Bert, is overwhelming? This part which we're doing now, or whatever is happening to other parts of game development or sound design in general?
Moving on here. Like the
Uh,
probably going to sound a lot like the
yeah, Dan, this is the PicsArt recording. This is not the PicsArt that you're hearing right now. This is the tenderloin, but let me show you the PicsArt. That was this is actually part of the PicsArt that I just edited in the beginning of this. It's pretty nasty. This is the cottage cheese, by the way. Um, these splattery sounds here, they're kind of cool. Um, yeah, so like these, it's super gross, man. We're supposed to eat it, not necessarily toy around with it. But it doesn't really matter if it's pig's heart or whatever, or if it's just other kinds of meat. It's just I had to get out of I had to get it all out of the fridge. I'd been really sick for a couple of days, just literally living in my toilet. Too much info, but that's all right. Um, Peace by Norway. This is Wavelab, which is just for editing, really. Normally, I use Cubase to do all my stuff, and so yeah, this one is really cool. I don't actually know. It's a little, if you can hear it, I don't know if you can hear it, but in the beginning of a lot of these files, it's because my microphone is set up for recording other materials. So I get these really low frequencies here, which is when I bump into my table. I need a different kind of setup, but you can hear this. It's just like a woo in the beginning, which is super annoying. And it's really, I can edit it out and sort of like try and EQ my way out of getting rid of it, but it's actually a problem because that sort of thing shouldn't be in the recording to begin with. So the perfect solution to that would probably be to take it out of the like re-record it. I mean, Splatter 2. Oh yeah, by the way, when I do these really long recording sessions, like this one here with the cottage cheese, and you can hear me coughing and shit in the background. The weird thing about that is that it's just me walking about in my apartment, and sometimes I notice I talk to myself. So sometimes I have really long conversations saying weird stuff to myself. Like you can see, this here is a 13 minute and 30 seconds recording of something that should probably take me just a couple of minutes to do. So there's tons of these parts where I'm not doing anything, just walking about in my apartment saying weird stuff to myself. Being divorced is lonely. Did I mention that? Oh. Anyway,
Going to sound a lot.
this is like a meat tear. So yeah, so Bird, there's lots of ways to find out how to create good audio feedback for games, as in terms of whenever there is feedback. One thing that is whenever you work in a project, I would try to communicate with the game's designers in as many ways as possible, as early as possible, to simply say, I would like sound to be the source of feedback or the source of communication whenever something happens, or if they ever present you with something where they tell you uh, we'll have this visual indicator of, let's say, where gunshots are coming from or whatever, then quite fast, already there, tell them that, okay, if there's a visual indicator which direction this impact is coming from, then I would like the possibility to hook up my audio sound or my audio or my emitter or wherever the sound is coming from to that visual aspect so that it can kind of like rotate around the player. You don't even need to actually test it to begin with, because you know that if it's assigned to that graphical element that moves around the player, then then it will work in the end. But I try to communicate with the game designers as early as possible. It's a little tricky if you're alone or you're trying to get into it, but one real smart way is to simply fire up Unity or whatever engine you want to be using, and then simply try and create a game mechanic or download one of the free things that are in their asset store and just simply try and see what if I do something, how can I create the feedback to that. It's a little easier when you're on bigger projects, not necessarily to get it to happen, but it's a little easier because usually there are tools which will allow you to hook up stuff to stuff much faster. Yeah, so here we are. Yeah, this is also Meat Tear 2. Right.
Everything.
Okay, so here we have the broccoli. This is basically the broccoli that we did. Oh, not that one. This is the broccoli.
Here we are at the broccoli. We'll record everything, so we also get the.
It's a little annoying that they are clearly clipping a little bit. It's not ruining the sound file, but it's a little much. I feel like it's pretty poorly recorded. The sound is great. I mean, it's close and sounding as I want it. It's just like poor craftsmanship that it's clipping like that. Um, yeah, here you can hear the microphone again. Doo-doo. There's this tiny, tiny sound in the background. It's really, really annoying. I guess we can actually even see it in the Curvy Q spectrum if we do that. Let's try and say high res again. Yeah, see that? See that peak right there? Yeah, there. Doo-doo. And that totally shouldn't be there. So basically, we could probably just get rid of everything here. Yeah, the sound will be fine. So that's basically a 200 hertz cut, which is quite a lot, but it's it's okay, I guess. A little high cut, but anyway, process in place. The master section goes offline, so now that we're bypassing it, so actually we're hearing the sound as it was before the actual before we rendered it. Yeah, let's bone break 3. Here we go. Slurpee Burpee. Um, I kind of like this here. I know it's real tiny, but what if we beef it up a little here? I can try and repair it in RX for sure. The problem with repairing, I mean, it's possible to repair it, sure. RX has this really nice Spectral Repair function, which where I can just basically mark it out and then remove it. In this case, it was fairly easy to get rid of it because I can just EQ my way out of it. But of course, as a let's from the professional standpoint, it shouldn't be there to begin with. I shouldn't have to clean it. But in this case, I just recorded it and felt real bad. And then later, I discovered it in the recording because I didn't check the recording right away when I had done so. Um, so I mean, in theory, well, in practice, I could also go into RX and remove it, and that would be fair, and it would totally work. You could totally do that. But this here, I kind of like this here, this part here. Let's try and pitch it down. One of my favorite ways of dealing with issues is just to pitch stuff down. Let's click OK. And then let's say we save this here as we save it, and I want to save it as, here we go, and this here is pitch down bone. I think this is pretty cool up here in the highs, these mid highs. Yeah, let's try and do something about this here. Could be pretty cool actually. So this threshold, let's just try and bump it down and make a curve that looks ish like this. And then some more EQ. Here, still high res. I like that. And here we are. So we'll just loop it. Whoop. Yeah, see. So this here is just a tiny part of a sound, but let's say this part here, it almost sounds like two marbles hitting each other. You know, those magnetic metal marbles that hit each other. And the fun thing about this is that we can totally use that as some sort of carrier signal if we want to. Let's just try and render this here in place. So what I usually do is that after a render like this, I would reset my master section up here so that I'm forced to do it again so that I don't always have the same setup. See this? Right. Let's try with Kefir doesn't work in the new Wavelab because it's 32 bits, which is really annoying actually. Right. And we can try to maybe this here and then can we do something weird about it? You can actually. Oh. Let's just try and run it through glitch a little bit here. But glitch doesn't work in Wavelab either. That's what I forgot. Because it doesn't have a timeline that it runs through, so that's... Here we go. It's just me making a mistake. Sorry about that. Let's just randomize everything. Right. So let's make some unnamed file. Here we are. Why did it just do that? Because this here should be, let's say, what if you do it in place? For some reason, nothing happens when I render, which is really weird. Anyway, let's get rid of glitch and not use that. Remove plugin. Maybe we should run this through Cubase and then have nothing going on over there. Let's edit the rest of the sounds and then head over into Cubase and see what we can do over there. Wasn't it this one here? No. So, Bert, when it comes to comparing RPGs, it's really difficult to say anything about it unless I know which RPGs those two are. But normally, when it comes to turn-based games, there's lots of short instances of sounds being played every time an action is taken. So, unless that action is super clear to other players or should be very clear, then usually that is handled by UI. It's really difficult to do in turn-based to have live stuff happening and then have, let's say, valuable information coming back to the player. Um, let's see here. small slurp. Mm-hmm. It's this one here. All right, let's try heading over to Cubase, and I'll just toggle this other screen here, and let's try. It's going to try and save the remainder of the files here. Here we go. All right. Firing a Cubase. And it's about to fire up. That's basically it. Let's see how it goes. Oh, wait. Cubase is initializing. For some reason, sometimes when I boot up Cubase, it's initializing VSTs that I haven't installed for ages, which it apparently suddenly thinks are important to initialize. I have no idea why, and it's really, really annoying because it's not supposed to do that. What? You're not. Beta versions of tools that I have, which just won't run. Anyway. Sorry for drinking while doing this, but I had a rough night, so just sipping on some Coke here, which is good because I normally don't drink Coke with sugar, but it's, you know. So Bert, Cubase does, along with others, have quite strict protection. Right now, it only runs if you have a dedicated dongle, which is kind of fun, I suppose. But there was one of the previous versions. I think it was Cubase 5 or Cubase SX3, maybe. A long time ago, back in like 2003. Yeah, it thought to be uncrackable. Um, which is kind of weird. But I think they managed to actually crack it back then by creating some sort of virtual dongle. I'm not actually sure. I'm no hacker and or cracker or whatever. But I think they managed to. By the way, Cubase is still initializing, so yeah. But anyway, I think they considered it uncrackable Cubase back then. It was, I guess, when it came out, it was kind of new to it. I also guess that Steinberg back then realized that they also needed people to be able to crack their software because else people just wouldn't use it. Not saying that you should use cracked software, not at all, but I think back then, because their software was uncrackable for such a long time, then people would switch to newer versions of Logic or newer versions of whatever was available back then, Fruity Loops, etc. It's funny you should mention it. Mine is also patched up with duct tape and stuff. It's like the worst quality dongle that you can imagine for Cubase, the one that Steinberg provides. Everybody that I know who runs Cubase or has the Steinberg dongle, they always laugh at it because it's everybody has this duct tape protected dongle. I guess they made the dongle so that it would just stay in one computer and only be used there. The only problem with that is that I take my dongle with me all the time, like literally to bring my dongle to work. I have it with me when I go on projects. I have it with me when I'm on the train and all sorts of things. And eventually it just breaks and falls apart, which is really bad compared to the iLog dongle, which I also have here. which hasn't broken at all. Runs fine, you know. Um, uh, da, da, da. But anyway, this streaming thing works pretty well, I think. I just need to get used to it, and then we can probably do it some more. Also, I need to figure out how to properly stream from Cubase and so on, so that I don't show off stuff that I'm not supposed to, or stuff that I don't want to show, and stuff that we can sort of get more out of. Like, I need to get used to this streaming business, but it's not meant for the bigger audience. It's more like meant for the more geeky audience within game audio. But so that also means that we should have some whoever just joined the stream right now, I'm really sorry that there's nothing on the screen right now. We're initializing Cubase. That might take a while. Well, not necessarily a while, but it's booting up something. We could, while we are at it, simply go back into Wavelab. So instead of waiting, we can just check out Wavelab. Um, and go back to the denoise recordings that we have here. Let's try and see if we can make something cool.
We'll record everything.
There is also I have here the sound of the cottage cheese lid, which is pretty cool. Because there's one cool thing that you can see here is that that's one of the things that I've always really liked about visual EQs like this. Not 96, I want high resolution. Here you can see the pitch in this window, sort of like as like a small wave come back. So yeah, this part here. So if we, let's say, crack all this here down, and then simply nah, it's not sounding that cool. And this here needs to go. So control delete. Sometimes removes it as supposed to. Here we go. Come on. There we go. So we'll try and add some peak master to it. The search function here in Wavelab is also real crappy now. And just give it a good go. Here we go. And in place. That's too loud. Way too loud. Let's just give it. Here we are. There we go. Now we render this in place. So now that it's using, now we have the right set of sounds. Let's go here. Actually, I'm just going to try and run. What if I save this as pitch down something? And I'm just going to swap the stream again and then try and run the older version of Wavelab, and I'll show you something cool here, because then we can just move away, and here we are, type blood. Let's try and do something cool over here again. So this is Wavelab, what? Really old Wavelab. But the cool thing about this is that this allows us to run all sorts of plugins that we did not know existed. And I can't search in. Oh, I forgot how bad this is. Um, Mm, 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 mm. Let's come on, load. I think actually Wavelab is using the same library of VSTs as the previous version was, which is a problem because if it does that, then it's sort of like it has already blacklisted the um, the um, the Kefir plugin, which is stupid. But come on, and now it's crashing on me. What the? Here we go. Let's just exit this here. Yeah, old Wavelab looks real cool. Here we are. And we will import all the files that we have. And this is why it's not working. So let's go preferences, workspace, options, VST connections. Don't use that. Use the Windows MME. Here we go. Ah, much better. Now you can hear this. All right. So let's try and see if we can find Kefir somewhere here. Unless it's gone, which is real annoying. And apparently it doesn't like when I load Decapitator, so we should just head back into the other Wavelab, really. Here we are. Right. Let's go back into proper Wavelab. And do it over here instead because clearly it's not working as intended over in the other one. Let's just say Decapitator. Here we go. Why won't it run Decapitator? Is it simply because my iLog isn't working? Even this is crashing now. Oh my freaking god. And Cubase is still initializing. What is going on today? Oh, anyway. Anyway. Why can't I get this to run? I guess it's because it's trying to initialize Cubase at the same time and then it won't allow all these. And then it won't all these. Anyway, here we can hear how this is. There's clearly a lot of low frequencies in this from the problem that we mentioned before because I've been bumping into the table. So the problem is around here actually. But what if we fire up RX? I can show you. This file is named blood. Let's fire up RX and I'll show you how we can get rid of this over here. Unless RX also wants to initialize a billion plugins at first for no apparent reason. Oddly enough, Cubase is still initializing and it shouldn't be. So this is like the life of the sound designer. Really, stuff isn't working, stuff is breaking. Okay, here we are, and we load all our sounds. Here we go. And it can only load 16 sounds at a time, I think. 16 times out of 5. Yeah. Yeah, you can sort of hear it down here. So let's say Spectral Repair, and we'll mark. It's probably this down here. There we go. We could basically just say Spectral Repair. You see, it tries to like blur it out. There's also something here, and here, and here. Maybe there's a little more here. Let's try and sort of like blurring it out, not deleting it, but sort of like blurring it out, which works pretty good. Let's see. What? You got a problem with my desktop? This is actually when the desktop is neat and orderly. So see, we got rid of the hum of the bumping stuff down here, um, which is great because we can clean it up. But as we talked about before, it would be way better if that was just not in the recording to begin with. The microphone is just too sensitive, and it's hanging on this microphone holder, which is really annoying. Um, yeah, Sony Asset was nice. Yeah. Um, Actually, Jordan, I used to have a desktop that looked way worse than that. All three monitors of mine were full of these, full of icons all over the place. And the problem with that was that once I had filled up the monitors, the sound would start to, the icons and files and folders and whatnot would start to stack up. So you couldn't even use the desktop. But that's mainly because I used the desktop to place sounds on it. I'm trying to get way better at it, but I usually still use the desktop to store stuff. Um, yeah, but these sounds, they are pretty good. So what about if we say we only want to listen to I think it's what is it? Um, da, 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 where is the here? We can maybe mark out. We could theoretically just say. Hmm. So let's say spectral denoise. What if we want to learn that and then say here best quality and we want to output noise only process. We'll save this. That's Dark DLC. Weird noise. Cubase is still initializing. Yay. I don't know why. Apparently, it usually does that whenever if I unplug the dongle and then re-plug it back in, which I find very weird because I just used it yesterday and the day before to do lots of things in it. Anyway, Jordan, I'm not burning the desktop. That's just how I roll. So this here, I guess we could. This could actually be pretty cool if we could we saved this sound here as weird denoise. If we then use that sound as sort of like a carrier signal in Kefir, as we have shown before. Um, no, I didn't save that onto my desktop. I saved it onto the folder called DARQ DLC. But I'm trying to stop the saving stuff onto the desktop. I really am, because I actually rarely use the desktop. It's mainly a place where I just store stuff. Actually, it resembles quite a lot my office desktop, my physical desktop, which I'm sitting at right now, like full of stuff that's just gear and paper and whatnot. So this here, let's try and see. So the thing is, okay, over here, let's just, while Cubase is still initializing, let's try and do some fun over here in RX. The thing is that let's say it has tools that can do really weird things, but what if like let's say a deplosive, which is meant to take away pop sounds, what if there are no pop sounds, then how does that work? Or what about deverb? Let's try deverb here and say, oh, we'll just mark an area here and say learn, and then we can get these really weird artifacts. Yeah, like that, I guess. Get away with that. If we output reverb only, then we get basically what's still there. So let's just try and process this here. This is like a, I don't know, tiny sound that we could hopefully smash into something. Let's save as. See, this is not the desktop. It's wet weird noise. Let's just do that and head over to. Here we are. Here we have the noise. We'll just get rid of this. What if we pitch this down? Maybe just a little. And by the way, Bert, it does sound like I need an SSD. It's just really weird because most of my VSTs are actually on my SSD. It's actually really weird, really weird. Anyway, we'll clear this here and then say add some reverb. I'll be fine. Just Steinberg's ordinary reverb will do. Let's just crank it up here. And we'll probably, so if I render this, let's say in place, I get this weird metallic noise, which is way cool. What if we want to render and then say options? Why won't it do that? We can just here we are. Why won't it add silence to there? Come on. From file to the end of cursor. There we go. So now we can that gives us that. So and let's cross our fingers that Decapitator will work now. Actually, let's just use a different distortion just to begin with, just for the sake of it. Meh. Let's get rid of that. It doesn't sound cool. What do we have? What do we have? I do have some waves. No. It's a little too distorting. Yeah, actually, we should render this and give it an unnamed file. Here we are, and it takes a while to render. Okay, nice DC. Most of my editing I do in editors like Wavelab, actually. I do that mostly in there, and then I put stuff together in my DAW. The reason why I do that is that previously, in older versions of Wavelab, you could get lots of, let's say, happy accidents or lots of cool things happening if you would just stack up a bunch of VSTs and then render. Um, that would give you some cool results. I guess when it comes to just editing like now, that I'm doing like now, because I'm all of my favorite VSTs that are 32-bit doesn't work in Wavelab any longer, then I would probably use Wavelab only as sort of like a mastering tool rather than actually going into the DAW and then do stuff in there. Um, when Cubase starts working, we can take a look at it. For sure. What time is it? We'll just render this here again and again. So let's. So what if we take this and say, for example, this whole thing here, we'll paste it here and there. No. We'll just fade it in, select all copy, and then undo this, and then here we say paste again. We'll do the same thing here. We have the reverb running still, which we don't want. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe we could, if we pitch this up again. Let's try and make the room bigger, just as big as possible, and then we can potentially say pitch accumulator, pitch shift here, and an octave this. Yeah, okay. Here and here, and here. We try and render this. As you can see, it's starting to get real slow in the rendering process. Let's try and do that again. Yeah, sampling cleanup, but okay, so whenever I get this up and running and the proper version of Wavelab, I can do a stream on how it actually worked in the previous versions of Wavelab, where you can just throw stuff at it and use it as a design tool rather than and as an editor. The problem with the modern versions of Wavelab is that they changed the UI, they changed the GUI, they changed a lot of ways that a lot of the things work in there, making it more effective for what it's meant to be used for. The problem is that I want to use it for something else, so. Um, I haven't actually studied sound design. I studied electronic music composition at the Royal Academy of Music in Denmark, the Music Conservatory, but they call it the Royal Academy of Music. I don't know why. And then I studied. I did a master's degree in so-called audio design, but that's um, an academic thing at the University of Aarhus where I studied audio design. It's an academic thing, so we didn't exactly learn sound design there. But Matteo hiding. Huh? So what I did was that actually the course in electronic music composition was actually in the long run where we would learn a lot about um, interactivity, art installations, interactive art installations, and so on. That was actually the in hindsight probably some of the best stuff that I learned about sound design and the acoustic classes. Yeah, so this is actually pretty cool. I should be able to say that I want. Um, I forgot where the reset button is for this anyway. Actually, what I want is only this here. Let's try and render this into a new, which we can then say we want to pitch bend. Process, pitch bend, preserve duration, and then pitch it all the way down. Best quality. Ta-da. It's only possible to do it. What the fuck? Here we go. Let's do it again. Yes. Okay, so we take this and copy this over here. And then because we have this EQ here, I think there is a way to invert this, but I'm actually not sure how that works. But we can just do it ourselves manually. Here we go. Right. So let's over here, and then we select all, and we this is totally not what I was supposed to be doing out of these sounds, but this is what actually came out of it. Dun 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 dun. Cubase is still initializing. That's just messed up. Messed up. Why is Cubase doing that to me when I need it anyway? Save this here as Drony1. Drony. Here we are. So, and let's crank up the volume. So basically here we now have a loop that if we turn this off. It's a 10-second loop. We can probably do like this and this and say we want to where the fuck is crossfading? Where the hell is that? Dun dun dun. Where the hell is that? Where the hell is it? Anyway, we can just do it manually, really. Here we go. Fade in, cut it out, fade out this, and paste it like why is God? Why does it do that? Here we go. There. Oh, we have a nice little loop, and it should be looping perfect. No, it doesn't. Why the fuck doesn't it do that? There we go. Fade in, cut out, fade out, paste it like this. It's a little too little. Like that. There, and fade out. Oh my god, why isn't this working? Anyway, I guess this loop here could be pretty fun to use. This is rather disturbing. It's because I'm live on YouTube, exactly, then nothing works, apparently. I have no idea why none of this is working. I should totally be checking that out. But I should be looking into it. It's just also because I'm a really bad streamer. Oh yeah, it worked. Great. All right. I'm just trying to look for something that I can. Here we are. Actually, we should. Now that it's distorting, we should. Here we just got some more. Sod's Law? Yeah. I think we have Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong. It's sorry, yeah. This is an MS decoder. The weird thing about that is that if you try to decode something that's actually not MS, it does weird shit to it. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Yeah, it's Murphy's Law. Kind of like the same thing. Which sucks, by the way. But next time, I promise, I'll make sure that Cubase is up and running for me. Let's render this here. Here we are. Render. Nice machine learned loop that I can actually be using. Where's the click? It's probably this here. No. If you see the click, let me know. It's right here somewhere. It's probably this then. Like that made it. Like that makes it any better. Edit. Oh, and I forgot where they put that. My drawing tool. And like that. Let's try and render this again. Nope. This is kind of soothing. I actually don't know if it exists in Ableton. I actually don't think so because in most DAWs you can't edit the raw wave file like that. There might be some tool like that, but what it's really good for is that, let's say, if you zoom in real quick, let's say you find a click like this, like that, then technically you can just draw like this, and then you kind of remove the click. It's real cool. I used it quite a lot. Actually, it doesn't do that as much, but in previous versions of Wavelab, it would always create this tiny click when you would crossfade a fade out with a fade in to create loops, which meant that you basically manually had to. Yeah, you can do it in Audacity for sure. So whenever you have this, let's say you had this fade out and you mix a crossfade with a fade in to create a loop, you would get maybe a click around here, and then you could always just zoom in and then either delete that part or just smoothen it. That works really well. It's super dope. Okay, anyway, here we have it. Let's try and pitch it down a little just to try it out here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Audacity is free. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Not because it's free. I just dislike some of the functionalities that it has. But for a free tool, it's totally legit. And I've also downloaded it myself sometimes if I don't have an editor with me, sometimes at work or at some office or field recording. If I didn't bring my laptop and I have some other guy's laptop, then instead of starting to download all sorts of crappy software, then Audacity is totally legit to be using. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, so one of my ideas now is that I could probably take this into Cubase, and then we could have this loop here playing, and then automate this. And then probably use that as some sort of, we can create some really crazy loop we could use for something. What else do we have? We have, actually I should save this file before I go any further. Drone 2, Roger. Decapitator is super awesome. It's everything in that Sound Toys VST package is really cool. It was on sale at one point where I bought the whole package. I didn't necessarily need all the plugins, but buying the package was cheaper than buying the individual ones all by themselves, the ones that I wanted. So Decapitator is definitely one of them. The cool thing about a Decapitator is that you can basically, it can create very subtle distortion, which is way cool. Like if you hook up a VST instrument and you just sit and hammer at the keys, then you can sort of like make stuff sound really interesting really fast. Especially if you work like I do, where you just combine VSTs and sort of like have this, the VST chain become your instrument, so your input is not irrelevant, but is less important than what you do with your VSTs. Then Decapitator is a tool that really does really well because it sounds great and has lots of things going on where you have lots of control, and it even if it does actually distort, I know it's a distortion tool, but if it distorts the signal, it doesn't sound super crappy like most other distortion tools do. Audacity does have some cool features, especially in the vocoder. Also, if you remember, I think it's not Premiere, what's that all called? Adobe Audition now, which used to be Cool Edit Pro. Cool Edit Pro 2 had some really fat features when it came to vocoding and making music out of things. It had this feature called Make Music, where you could literally just mark any section of music or of sound and then draw in the notes that you wanted it to play. On old computers, that would take like several hours to render if you would just mash in notes. But you would literally get a file that would basically look like this. So you would get something cool in the beginning, and then it would just be massively distorted, unusable crap here in the middle. And then this fade out would have something interesting too. It would have all sorts of glitches and so on. And it was really cool. I used it for a lot of weird stuff back in the day when I was young on my old computer. We need to save this. And we need to save this as a higher format file. Replace. All right. Cool Edit is so 90s, yeah. I'm trying to actually. So this stream was to begin with just me editing the sounds of a recording I did the other day. But I also need to create some background sounds and other sounds. And this is sort of like a sound that just spawned out of me fooling around with the VSTs. And I guess this could become part of some background loop that I'm putting together. I guess this would be some sort of drone that I'll mesh into the background of the new DLC level, and I don't know if it will be this loud. I guess I need to try and solve. Something like this. Like, I need something windy and drony and real far out. And this is one of my favorite ways of working. Like, just sit and design stuff, not necessarily as the end product, but more or less in I'm trying to like basically just create a lot of building blocks, and then eventually I'll run Cubase. We had problems with Cubase previously in this stream, but then just take all those sounds and fire them into Cubase, and then try and mash it up. Yeah, reverb on this would be pretty sweet actually. Like there isn't enough already, but we can change the MS here. And then try here. Yeah, here we go. And as you can see, it's starting to get really slow. Long files like these, with all these plugins running through them, it takes a while. Yeah. Nah, that's too much. But this here could be, let's say, the foundation of a nice background loop. Like if we just... Here we go. There, cut that out, and over here in process. Where was it? Where was it? I just saw it before. Here. There we go. Paste and crossfade. Equal power. If you do it with equal gain, it does these weird, not clicks, but you can hear the fade out and the fade in. So now we have a nice little loop here. So let's meditate upon this. Let's sit here and meditate to this loop here. That might be real cool. Yeah. The loop should be perfect. Let's see. Yeah, anyway, so let's save this here as nice background loop. Could be something cool. Let's just try and see if we can. Yeah, this is what we started with. So that became what we heard before in that other sound. So basically, I quite often use these these EQ filters basically as a wave shaper. Which is nice when it happens. Hey, criteria. I need a new mouse. This one is way too weird. Yeah, so this chain of effects. Let's go back to the sound that we just made. This chain of effect. There's an EQ here, um, which if we solo this, it basically only plays this. We can set this to high resolution. You should be able to see more frequencies here. And then I have this massive 20-second reverberation with big size, which is one of my favorite ways of working. You usually just crank that up because it just creates this giant room. I don't necessarily need this to sound roomy. I just need it to be wet and long and so on. We have Decapitator, which is this is what it sounds like after the EQ, the reverb, and the Decapitator. And you can see it's just very subtly distorting it down there. We could like that. We have more reverberation, also almost full power, and we changed some of the. No, that was not that one. More reverb, and we have this here, which is the Vox and Go MS encoder, decoder, whatever. Actually, it looks pretty cool. What it does is that it thinks we're giving it an MS signal, so it's trying to combine left with right with different variations and ratios, which means that odd results is coming out of it. But then when you feed other things into it later in the chain, sort of like you can also have let's say encode MS in the beginning of your chain, and then at the end of the chain have it decoded again. You can get some real nice results out of or interesting small things happening if you do it like that. And then we have a brick wall limiter, simply just it's set to -3, just to make sure that stuff doesn't distort too much. If something distorts, I usually try and take advantage of it so that it distorts in the manner that I want. Because distortion isn't something that I normally want. If it's let's say an unwanted result of me cranking up the volume, I want distortion to be something that I can fully control. That can happen by cranking up the volume on purpose, but then I also need a break wall limiter because I prefer to keep it below 0 in the actual rendering chain. Unless you work with something like 64-bit files or whatever, and that's just that's too much. It shouldn't be like that. Be more reverberation after the limiter. So also like full scale. We changed the filtering of which filters it changes, and then added the made it fully wet so we don't hear any of the original signal. And at the end, we're just having this so-called peak master, which is a plugin that basically just gains whatever you put into it and has an output ceiling. It's kind of like a limiter. It just does so really well for something real quick, like if you just want something to be louder. So, yeah. And didn't we just get that over here? Let's try and pitch it down again. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you have distortion and compressors, something that's trying to, let's say, counter each other. You get these weird artifacts that, let's say, the MS1 and the brick wall limiter is sort of like constantly kicking in, and then the noise that you get out at the other end goes through the reverb and so on. Then you get all these let's say don't know what to call it, like bumpy, weird, atmospheric, smooth stuff. Which is way cool. No problem, by the way. So if we render this in an unnamed file, something digital going on. So if we take this here and save it as a 4824 file, drone temp, here we go. Then we can copy that, and then over here, because this here also needs to be saved as a drone temp 2, and that also needs to be 48, because if you run different formats, it won't work. You can't copy paste on top of each other. And we want clipboard to be yeah. What if we do like this and then invert the phase? Takes 20 seconds to render the file now. That's pretty long for a normal render of a file. But It's getting there. Let's see. Come on, faster, faster. Let's just clear the effect chain so that I force myself to like create a new chain, which means that I can't 100% duplicate what we just did. And let's try the octaver. Don't do that. Here. One thing that you can always do if something is distorting because you're EQ gaining it, you can turn it down and then EQ gain it from there. Apart from that, let's try and take a look at all the sound toys that we have here for sound toys. Echo Boy. I haven't used this at all. TRM tools doesn't work here either. They're also 32-bit. Anyway, it's getting late. I need to end this because I actually need to get some work done. Let's try some more Decapitator. Like this, maybe add some reverberation to it, and then basically just reverse it. Wow, I have this massive CPU, and it's still 20 seconds to render a file. We'll see. I should be saving some of these files because if I don't, we lose them all when they. And let's just say in here, process, reverse. Yeah, see, this here is real nice. Let's render this here in a new file. Save it. And that's basically just editing a bunch of files and then eventually coming up with a bunch of results, which I'll be putting into DARQ. I also have to create the new puzzles. Why is it clicking? Something's up with the clicking here. 12 seconds. It's getting better, but that's mainly because we cut down on the effects. Anyway, I gotta be going. I need to create some sounds. Thank you for watching the stream. I promise it'll get better because I need Cubase up and running, a couple of other things, and we can start. This is more like a thing where I'm just testing out how it's working. It was kind of like a spontaneous idea, but hopefully, yeah. How you get started with the basics of sound design? Well, okay. It sounds a little weird if you say you should just get started, but what I would do if I were you was to get hold of tools. So let's say specifically for designing sound, not necessarily game audio implementation and so on, but get a hold of, if you don't have any money, get a hold of an editor like the one that we have in this stream. Uh, Not Wavelab, but well, you can, but take for instance Audacity, which is free. Sometimes there's a real cool and low priced offer on SoundForge and whatnot, and then simply add stuff, simply put in a sound and then try and experiment with various plugins and see what they do. You can also, if you go online and simply Google free glitch VSTs or free glitch, no, just free VSTs, you will find the weirdest VSTs that does tiny things. So once you get the hang of how those work and so on, you will know what to sort of like get the hang of that. Oh, something sounds like this if I do it in one way. Something sounds like something else if you do it in another way. Then later you will know that if I combine that experience with this other experience, you might already in your head know what result you will get from it. Like if I add reverberation here, and if I add distortion here, then you know from a previous session that if you added delays here and reverse that, then if you combine those two experiences, then you can create the sound that you want. Else, another way to get started with sound design is to buy a recorder. You can also use your phone, but I advise you to buy a recorder. A Zoom is fine. Go places and record stuff. I'm not talking about you. Well, you can record atmospheric stuff, as in you just record a street sound and room tones and so on. But start to think about what is it that you're actually hearing in the location that you are. Imagine if you're working on a film. You don't necessarily have to be working on a film, but if you're working on a film, then if you have a scene and you're trying to create the atmospheric sounds of that scene, think about how does it actually sound. Like let's say we're in my apartment at my house, and there's a scene where somebody sits in my couch. Then what kind of room tone is in that room? What kind of sounds are there in this house? Like I can hear the upstairs neighbor slightly walking on the floor. I can hear a TV in the background because my neighbor's watching TV. Maybe there's a child in the downstairs apartment. I live on the ground floor. That doesn't matter. Um, and then you're there. I have really bad windows, so I can hear the cars out in the street, and so on. Think about that. You can also go remote places and start to concentrate and listen to what does silence or the sound of nothing actually sound like. You'll be surprised. And once you start getting the hang of that, then the next time you work on something or you offer your services to someone that where you're about to design something, then you can say whenever they show you some scene in the game or some scene in the movie or whatever you're working on, that they want this to sound cool, then you can create that atmosphere from scratch, basically. Um, a cool exercise for this is if you go and listen to things and then start to write down on a timeline what are you hearing, and then go home and then with completely different material try to recreate that soundscape with the correct timing and so on. Like you take a piece of paper and let's say you draw lines, which is each 1 minute long. You start a timer and then say, I want to record 5 minutes, but it's without a recorder. You want to record it inside your head, basically, and on paper. So you start writing down, just like you would with notes and music, write down oh, there's a bird after 30 seconds, there's a car at 35, there's a plane at 40, and that continues on to 55 seconds, and so on. To try and write that down, you sort of like create your own timeline for the ambience that you're hearing. In the end, eventually, that exercise becomes that you know how to create the sound of what you want. Like somebody wants you to sound design a forest. Okay, you've been in a forest, you've written it down. Then you will start to realize, I know that in this forest there are birds, there's a squirrel, there's a chipmunk running around, there's maybe a horse in the background, and a deer. And there's wind in the trees, there's leaves on the ground, and so on. So once you start knowing all those things and pay attention to all those things, you will have a much easier time designing the soundscape that you are trying to design. Um, okay, that sounded like an awful lot. um, if I were you, I would buy a recorder and start recording things straight away. And I would get a hold of whatever editor you can get your hands on. If you don't have any money, get Audacity and try to simply throw any sound in there and try to throw any VST in there and see what happens. And then experiment with fading in and out and reversing sounds. It's one of the most basic things to do, but it gives you really nice results. And if you watch this stream all over again, it's getting quite long, but anyway, then you will also notice that a lot of this is just fooling around. It may seem like I'm blindly fooling around. I am not, because I know what each of these plugins do, and I kind of know it kind of ish, but the result I'll get. But anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line. I can maybe take a look at what you've recorded or whatever. Yeah, I have to go. It's 6:30 here. I need some food. I need some more Coke. Drinking Coke, that is. And I need to start working on the game. I was supposed to be working on the game, and now I ended up creating content for the game nonetheless, but doing this stream. It's been fun. Thank you for watching. And do get in touch if there's anything you need to know about all this. And if there's any suggestions you have for a future stream or anything like that, also let me know. Because then I'll try and make it more, let's say, user-friendly watching these streams. Okay, everybody? Thank you for watching. Cheers.